is regime change. Now, this is, it's out now, yes?
No.
It is not out now.
You have a secret copy.
When does it come out?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So when this airs, we'll be jumping the embargo.
It's kind of broken, right?
I think we're well past that.
Make me feel special, just for tonight. So it's not embargoed. How many people did... You have information in here from inside the Situation Room where they're having a meeting to discuss the damage from the Epstein files. There's only 5 people in the room, 6? How many people were in the room?
There were a couple of meetings that we describe in the book, and so there is one which was about half a dozen people, and then there were others with multiple people, the senior levels of the White House, the DOJ, and so forth.
You have information. 6 people are in the room. Without giving away the secrets, who's the rat? Tell me the rat. Who is it? Besant? It's Lutnick.
You sound like Trump right now.
Yeah, really.
Can I ask, when I read the book, honestly, there was a part of me that thought, I bet Trump called them. Is a lot of this information from Trump?
He wasn't in these meetings.
Yeah, they had the Epstein meetings without him because they knew he didn't want to talk about Epstein.
Right. This was to protect against him not wanting to discuss this and leaks. Those were the reasons that these meetings happened.
How'd that go?
I hope you're enjoying the book, John.
I am enjoying it, but I am baffled that this administration, they are so tight-knit and so loyalist, that you would be able to glean this. Was it on tape? Is that people have suggested it might be on tape?
Yeah, we're not going to speculate or talk about that.
I'm not asking you to speculate. I'm asking you to tell me.
Yeah.
I'm asking you to give me how.
We appreciate you. We're not going to talk about sourcing.
No, I wouldn't. And I wouldn't ask you to.
Would you tell me to, or would you tell him to?
What I would do is, I'm going to say a name. Are you even surprised at the level of access and information that you got? When you went into this, did you think you would get people to grant you the kind of inside information that you were granted?
It was really hard. I mean, this presidency, for lots of reasons, is almost unrecognizable from his first term. But
it's almost unrecognizable as a presidency.
Oh, it is, actually.
That's
really the premise of our book. We're seeing a form of regime change in our own country. We haven't seen anything like this. But in the first term, there was prolific leaking. And one of the biggest pieces of nonsense in this term, and there's a lot of it, is that they're the most transparent administration there is. Actually, they're very good at keeping secrets when they want to. The perfect example most recently is this memorandum of understanding to end the Iran war. Very senior people in the government had not seen that document. Very, very senior people. Only the tiniest number of people had seen it. So this almost killed it. I mean, this was really hard. We've both covered him for a long time. I think people feel like this stuff spills out. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard reporting.
How do you, when you're reporting on something like that, here's something that crosses my mind. One thing that you do glean from the book is every move they make is intentional, including the misinformation and access that they give you. So they might have a scenario where you talk about it when the USAID or the Musk memos were coming out, and they thought, oh, okay, we need something to distract this. Mm-hmm. Why don't we announce that I'm going to prosecute Obama?
To reopen Gitmo.
That's what it was, to reopen Gitmo. Mm-hmm. So if they are purposefully misinforming, how do you guard against that finding its way into your reporting?
It's a good question, and it's a
fair question. You know what? Thank you. I'm a f***ing journalist. But what do you do?
Part of it is the fact that we've been covering his world for so long. We actually have a sense of who is telling the truth, who is not. But we don't just take one person's word for it. This is not, I was just in this meeting and let me tell you about, the heroics. We spent an enormous amount of time verifying what is in this book. If we were at all in doubt, it pained us how much we did not put in the book. We either didn't put it in because it really wasn't relevant anymore, or because we couldn't confirm it to our satisfaction, and there are things we are still trying to confirm. But what is in here, we are confident of. That doesn't mean that I'm not confident that the White House will at some point say we're wrong. I'm sure they will, but that's
But even that's purposeful.
For sure, but we assume, we've gotten to a point where we just assume false until proven otherwise. You assume what you're being told is false until proven otherwise. You don't take anyone's word for it. There's no, what is it, Reagan, trust but verify? There's no trust.
There's a story in here that Donald Trump called Howard Lutnick a pussy.
Accurate.
Yeah.
I'm not here to speculate.
I'm not saying it's accurate. Yeah. He is a pussy.
No,
I'm just saying
it happened.
I'm glad you issued that correction. But so then do you call a bunch of people and have to go, hey, I heard Trump called Lutnick a pussy.
Yeah.
Yes.
True?
Yeah, and
we asked
the thing
Trump
about
directly.
this book,
you asked him that.
Yeah, we asked him directly, and he certainly
didn't
push back on it. He didn't say yes, that's true. We had other confirmations, but it was it wasn't something he was racing to deny.
The thing about this book is, there's a lot of reporting historically over Trump, which is sort of, I would call it wispy. I'm not making it's hard to get inside the room, but when I say wispy, it's like Trump is thinking this, Trump is saying this. Mm-hmm. We say on this day, at this time, in this room, and here are the people around the room, this was said. And that was either happened or it didn't happen. You can, there's an element of you can check our work a little bit more than if we just said Donald Trump amorphously was thinking this thing, or on this Air Force One flight, this was said. We tried to do that in this book because we think it's important that you can anchor something in a scene and a setting, and people can hopefully have a bit more faith in the reporting.
What would you like this to? Because one thing that you don't do is psychoanalyze or make judgments about why it operates this way, or the psychology behind any of it. So do that now for me. Because here's what's very clear. He understands the power of bending reality. And he does it with great ease. So this would be the type of question. Does he truly believe that the Democrats rigged the 2020 election vote-wise? I'm not talking about when he gets into atmosphere. Is that something he actually believes, or is it something that he strategically proffers because he knows the reality distorting effects that has on the larger game he's playing?
It's hard to know often, which is why we don't get into psychoanalysis, other than the fact that we're also not psychiatrists. But it's hard to know when he actually believes something or if he is just saying something over and over again, because he is very aware of the power of repetition and the effect that it has on voters, on the media, on the general public, on other world leaders. In terms of the 2020 election, there are many people around him in our reporting who think he has convinced himself of that he does now believe that. I also don't know that whether he believes that really matters, because so many of his own government in 2020 said this was not the case.
Right. And why he flees interviews when he's asked to litigate it. What do you think is the best way to, you did this in 2020, you sat down with Trump and you were talking about COVID deaths. Mm-hmm. And he was making the case, I think, about the minimization of it. And you brought out facts and figures, and you showed them to him. And it was like the world stopped. Like, people went crazy for it, because they hadn't seen him litigated. Is that the way to report on him? Because we really don't do that very often.
It's interesting you use the word litigated, because the way I thought about that interview was, I was litigating reality with Trump. And it was actually the opposite of what you said. He handed me this sheet of paper.
He handed you the sheet.
But it was important, because the thing that drives me crazy often watching certain interviews with Trump is the tendency to move on. And it just drives me, it drives me really crazy because don't move on.
No.
Stay. Stay.
Yes.
And so this was...
Stay.
Yeah.
Heal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So this was a moment where I could have moved on. I actually had planned to move on. We'd spent about 20 minutes talking about COVID, and I was ready to go. There was a lot of other things to talk about. I only had half an hour, technically. But then I could tell he wanted to hand me this document. I was like, what's this f***ing document? So he hands me this document, and it took me a moment to understand what it was, but it looked like it had been put together by an intern. And it was essentially this chart where he was trying to argue to me that we're winning on death, basically, on COVID. And it was really preposterous, but you have to sit there, absorb it, and then pop the reality bubble with a needle. And
why is that so challenging? It seems very basic, and yet even it's very difficult to execute it. So why is that?
Well, it used to be somewhat easier, although I will say that Jonathan did the single best television interview with Trump that has existed. They have structured this White House, the press corps, so that it is primarily people or half people who they consider to be friendly to them. They control the media pool that is in there now. They control the seats. Routinely, the only person really challenging him aggressively, and not rudely or unprofessionally, is Caitlin Collins. And
kills him.
She takes an enormous...
No question.
And she takes an enormous amount of shit, and she keeps a total straight face.
Right.
But she doesn't have backup. In the old days, when we would be in the pool, even in the term one, and they made it harder, but it was still doable, you'd ask a question, somebody else in the pool would follow up on your question. Now, it is you ask a question about Ukraine, Iran, I can go on, and he turns to the reflecting pool, and it's 20 minutes of him just talking. And so it is much more challenging. It is also why, this has come up a lot as we've been talking to people about this book, but a lot of reporters have a cell phone number now, obviously, that's like,
I got it right here.
I totally would.
Do you have a cell phone number?
Yes, I have a cell phone number.
Can we call him right now?
Let's not.
That'd be crazy. You know what we should do? This is probably a little f***ed up, and you guys are professionals, but what if I call him as his pool guy? And I just call him and I'll be like, sir, I'll tell you, this f***ing thing just stays green. There's nothing I can do. I can't even tell you. I don't know what's going on.
A lot of people have his number. And for reporters, it's, wow, I have the president's number and I can speak to him directly.
There's a flattery to it.
And he controls the terms, right? There have been some pieces of news that have come out, but generally speaking, it's him setting the agenda. He says one thing here, he says something totally different 15 minutes later, and it's just him flooding the zone. And it's what he did in New York when he was a tabloid guy.
No question.
Right.
But this gets to the heart of its weaponizized access.
But
and I'll tell you,
but we're not doing it.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not. You guys are great. I'm talking about the other people. I'm not talking about them.
The other people.
I'm talking about these other people.
The other people also. There are many who do a good job, but yes, we don't engage in this phone.
I mean, everybody's doing a good job. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm just saying. Let me explain why, because this is the gist of it. Judith Miller, right? You remember Judith Miller, New York Times. So she went to the White House, and they fed her information that Saddam Hussein had aluminum tubes that could only be used for enriching uranium. He was making a nuclear weapon. And she wrote in the New York Times, I have discovered, me and my partner, through our diligent reporting, that Saddam Hussein has these tubes. Dick Cheney goes on Meet the Press the next day and says, the New York Times, no friend to this administration. But she was being used, or was a willful participant, in a manipulation. And if that's the case, that the phone number, they understand that it's his terms, and then that access is actually worth less than journalism. It's actually abetting. It's aiding and abetting in the crimes that they commit. How does that end? How do we stop that? And is that something that you believe is a problem? Because it seems like it's a dangerous, dangerous problem with this administration.
We don't find it useful. The reason we don't call him on his cell phone
Yeah.
is because it's not useful.
Correct.
I mean, what's he going to do? It's a 2-minute call, and he's going to say how everything's great and whatever. And again, if like the book, you're not going to get a detailed scene inside the Situation Room that is potentially includes information that's damaging for the White House and the administration from Donald Trump on a 2-minute call. So the type of reporting we do, it's not actually possible to get that from a phone call with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. I'm talking more about the cadence reporting, the 24-hour reporting, where it's not possible to have the kind of reflection and analysis that you might have over the quality of the sources.
But we don't do it for our daily reporting either.
Right. I mean, look, I can't speak to, I mean, I can speak to, but I'm not going to speak to how every single person in this White House press corps or in D.C. now does their jobs. The media environment is very different. Donald Trump obviously has taken advantage of that. He came back to Washington, and we talk about this a lot in the book, to a very different set of power dynamics, where you have media companies that are terrified of him. We are very fortunate to work for one that is independent and which he has no levers over.
Right.
But
and yet cares deeply about. As much as he talks about the New York Times, he seems to care deeply about what you guys think of him.
He has a specific relationship with the New York Times. For anybody, I mean, in his head, I don't mean actually. For anybody who wants to, for anybody who wants to understand how he looks at the New York Times, there was an episode of the daily podcast that the Times does where A.G. Sulzberger, our publisher, went to the Oval Office with me and Peter Baker in 2019, I think it was, and A.G. only went because Trump had invited him to come off the record.
Right.
And A.G. said, I'm not going to come off the record, but I will come if my reporters can interview you. And so he joined us, and he used the opportunity to directly say to Trump, the language you are using about a free press is being used to embolden despots around the globe. And Trump just kept saying, I think I'm entitled to a good story from my paper and my hometown paper, some version of that. That is how he sees it, and that is totally different. It is not useful to us. We did sit with him for an interview we requested repeatedly, but we made very clear it was a fact-check interview. It was not to sort of sit for open mic night.
And by the way, in that interview, he hands you a list of people from history that he's been told he's more powerful than. And the list is Mao, Stalin, Hitler. Like, he doesn't go with, like, George Washington. He goes with despots and tyrants and is like, F those guys, I'm bigger than them.
Top 10 is what he said to us.
The top 10?
The top 10, yeah.
Is America too small for him now? Is he now view this as I'm Alexander the Great?
Something to that, actually. I mean, Jonathan has a...
It was an extraordinary moment because throughout the reporting of this book, we had basically come to a thesis that he was far less responsive to domestic politics than he was in the first term. In the first term, if polls went down, stock market gyrations, he'd be much more reactive.
Right.
It's not to say he doesn't think about that at all. It's not.
Definitely thinks about stock
He definitely
market.
does.
Yeah,
It's not black and white, but he thinks about it far less. And so one of the questions we're asking our why is he willing to take much bigger risks this term than last term? I don't think he would have gone to war in the same circumstances. I don't think he would have taken America to war in Iran last term in the same circumstances. I'm not sure he would have authorized the operation to snatch a sovereign head of state in his pajamas out of his bedroom. You know, that was a very risky... American service members could have died in that operation. Thank God they didn't. When we sat across from him and he handed us that piece of paper that he said was written by a historian, it turns out it was written by a former golf caddy for Gary Player. But,
Wait, don't brush over that. He thought it was written by a historian. It was written by a golf caddy?
Yeah, this is a
golf caddy just came up and said, like, Ken Burns handed me this.
Sort of. He was golfing with Gary Player, who he's known for a very long time. We asked him a question about power and presidential power, and he immediately said he sent his all-purpose aide, Natalie Harp, out and said, Natalie, get the documents. And he said, do you know who Gary Player is? We weren't quite sure where this was going. And then he described golfing with Gary Player, and Gary Player had this historian with him named David King, and we spent a while trying to figure out who David King was. They sent us the text. They said he's a presidential historian. We tracked him down. Jonathan tracked him down, and he's a businessman, and Gary Player's former caddy and volunteer caddy, and he's a history buff, sure, but he's not a historian.
Yeah, no, listen,
but
I get that. A lot of buffs out there.
There's a lot of buffs, yeah. There's a lot of buffs.
It was interesting because the document itself basically just said Donald Trump's the most powerful man who's ever existed ever on the planet because he's in charge of the U.S. military and technology, but also willing to use the power. And then the people...
And he has planes.
the people it compared him to, as you mentioned, Mao, Stalin, Hitler, there was no moral dimension to it. It was just expressed in terms of raw power. And he was reading it out to us. We're sitting across the Oval, and he's like, relishing. He's like, Napoleon.
He was delighted.
Mao. You know, and it's very clear that what he wants to do is reshape both America, but also the world. He does, I think, want to be a Napoleonic type of figure.
Has he read the whole book, though? I mean, it doesn't end that great for
No.
But we're still talking about Napoleon,
well,
aren't we?
that's true. Yes.
We are still talking about it, but this is maybe the most, and I'll get to, what I took away from the book is, you know, there's always people are going to want palace intrigue and those kinds of things. What I took away was process. That the process of this White House is very much The Apprentice or Shark Tank. People come into his office and compete with an idea, and he chooses the one that he thinks has the most pop for this episode of the show. And they do it, and no one follows up in a future episode. So the tariffs go out there, and it's like, that's great. And then when it tanks the economy, nobody's like, hey, we should probably revisit that. He's like, that's an old episode. It's a lot of, it's all trailer, no movie. It's all advertisement and no follow through. And so what you're seeing here, the Iran war is a great example. Obama's JCPOA was 18 months of very tough negotiations, and they all those things. And Trump comes in, he's like, how about I just bomb them and we take a week? And there's no follow through. Is that what you've found there? That it's
a slightly different cast on that, I think. I mean, look, it's definitely a White House that does not like process. He doesn't like process.
Or competence.
And one of the things that he and...
You can say it.
One of the things that he and Stephen Miller spent a lot of time on.
Ooh, did you feel that? It got cold all of a sudden. Did you feel that? Did you feel that on the back of your neck? That was weird.
One of the things that he and Stephen Miller spent a lot of time on, and obviously...
Say it 3 times. Let's see if he counts.
Was essentially how to do things quickly and how to claim powers that weren't actually the executive branches, either because you could declare national emergencies.
Insurrection Act, that kind of thing.
100%, but it's across the board. It's a fentanyl emergency. It's a border emergency, even though the border crossings were down. There is a refugee emergency, so we have to change asylum status and so forth. And Trump isn't really thinking about these processes. He just wants things to be done fast. Right. Stephen Miller was thinking about both. And then Trump has other people who can offer to get him things quickly. On the tariffs, the reason I'm interested in that being the thing you pointed to is this was something he's kind of wanted to try for decades. He did not have an economic theory of the case about how tariffs would work. He thought tariffs were an incredible tool and weapon and blunt instrument. And that is exactly how they were implemented. What you do see is him saying things like, jacking up the tariff rate to China, on China for 145%, and then saying, holy shit, or some version of that, when he learns that's how high it is.
Right.
And his whole government was quite scared as they were not just approaching Liberation Day, but blowing past it.
But don't you think, because they're not, the litmus test isn't competence, it's loyalty. And the loyalty has to be given through humiliation rituals. Everybody that works for him has to go through a humiliation ritual. Those cabinet meetings are not discussions of policy. They are public humiliation rituals of anyone who wants to be in that office.
And they're very long. There's no question about that.
Well, because there's so much ass to kiss. Respectfully. How does this, as you watch this careen down the hill, you know, as you project out, we've got 2.5 more years of this.
Yeah.
If he thinks he's Mao and Stalin now, where are we going?
Well, part of the book is really a story of hubris. I mean, he came in this second term. It's a little deeper than what you were saying, because a lot of the people around him, there's an almost mystical belief in him, particularly the ones that went through the campaign with him. It's Donald Trump is a figure of destiny that survived 4 indictments, 2 assassination attempts, somehow won this election. Maybe in the first time when you would talk to senior aides, a lot of them had absolute contempt for him, and they would mock him and say, you know, this guy's dangerous, we're trying to stop him. You never hear that. These are people who, you never hear that. You never hear that.
There's none of the backbiting now on that.
No.
Not about
These are
him.
people who believe in him, and actually, even when he says something that they think, well, maybe that's kind of out there, well, maybe he's picking up on something that we're not picking up on. There's a deference to his judgment, and the Iran War is actually sort of a perfect example of that. We have in the book this incredible sequence of events where Bibi Netanyahu comes down to the Situation Room.
Great guy. He comes down to the Situation Room. Go ahead.
He gave Trump this presentation about regime change. Here's how it's going to work in Iran, and here's the people who might take over and whatever. Anyway, the CIA goes away overnight and does some analysis. They come back the next day in the Situation Room. The analysts come in and they say, this is total bullshit. This is like divorced from reality. The CIA director, John Ratcliffe, tells Trump it's farcical. Rubio tells him it's bullshit. And Trump says, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But he had a gut feeling. Again, this was a gut-driven decision. Trump thought this would be a fast war, that they would collapse quickly, that this regime was a paper tiger, and he was wrong.
And
he was wrong.
And what he said to Tucker Carlson, I think, was actually encapsulates what Jonathan was saying.
Great guy.
And which is most of what this presidency is now, which is everything's going to... Carlson was trying to talk him out of it during this war. And Trump says something to the effect of, everything is going to be okay. Everything's going to work out. It always does. Or
Because
it always is okay. Yeah. And that is how he thinks. And so...
Well, because for him, it's that Norman Vincent Peale power positive thing, but it works out for him. But this brings us, so we'll bring it around full circle and end on this. So they have a mystical belief in his gut that allows him to do this. So he does it, and it shits the bed. And we end up in a more dangerous, weaker position. We elevate this theocracy to a level of power in that part of the world that they have never had before. And they are now at that position. So in terms of litigating reality, now that this has come down, do they go, hey, you took a swing, some of them work, some of them don't? Do they still believe in the mystical, messianic powers of Napoleon II? Do they ever go like, maybe that's Waterloo? Like, how does reality not ever permeate this reality distortion field?
I think it's more nuanced than that. I do.
Of course it is.
There were many people on his team who thought this was a bad idea to start with, the war. There was really only one person who actually said that to Trump in a forceful way, which was Vance. And that actually irritated Trump to some extent. A lot of them didn't make the argument to him. It's very obvious to them, and actually I think to him as well. That's why he's doing such a fast reverse, basically saying, Bibi, you're out of control, we've got to get out, willing to take this deal.
But he's going to say this is the best deal that anybody's ever gotten, and nobody's ever gotten it, and Iran is weaker. And who's still buying that in the White House?
I don't think that many people still buy it in the White House, but I also don't think that you're going to see a lot of them quitting en masse. I mean, one of the things that we wrote about in the book was that, some of his advisors were talking last year about how the most disastrous thing for his presidency would be if he got into a war with Iran, and one of them said, I will resign if that happens. And I can tell you, without telling you who, that person is still there. So
J.D. Vance is still there. That's what you're telling me. Remarkable. I've enjoyed this. Please get this book. It is out tomorrow. It's called Regime Change. Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan.